Hello, and welcome to another Christmas episode of Lights Out, your virtual campfire. I'm your holiday hostess with the mostest ghosties, Sylvia Shults. I have had December and Christmas on the brain for this entire year. I hope you'll forgive me if I present a second holiday episode of Lights Out for 2017. Pour yourself a glass of eggnog, grab a couple of Christmas cookies, and let's go. Lights out. The ghost story has a long, proud history in literature. As much as some folks scoff at the idea of wandering spirits, it's no secret that many of the heavyweights in high school English classes wrote very entertaining tales of the supernatural. Nathaniel Hawthorne, M.R. James, Charles Dickens, they were all quite familiar with creeping out their readers. One author who excelled at this was Edgar Allan Poe. Poe came by his weirdness honestly. With his wild mop of dark hair, piercing stare, and moody personality, he was destined to be an author of bizarre tales. And lucky for Poe, one of his best-known and creepiest stories was based on true facts. I spoke with Holly Nadler, an expert on the spirits of New England, and the author of 4 books on the subject. She shared the origin of one of Poe's most beloved tales.
Edgar Allan Poe was born in Boston, and so he's a true native son, in 1809. And there was something called the Roving skeleton of Boston Bay, but that was a little after Poe's time. But I'll mention that in a second. But he wrote one of his most famous short stories was called The Cask of Amontillado.
I remember that from English class.
Oh yes. Well, this was. I mean, for those who have blanked on what that was about. It involved a man who had been bricked up alive in a dungeon, and how that had led to some ghostly happenings. But in 1827, when Poe was 18, he enlisted in the army, and his first posting put him at Fort Independence on Castle Island in Boston Harbor. You know, interestingly, Boston does have a bunch of islands. And a lot of them have these old military barracks and fortresses, and there are a bunch of stories about them. There was one. I'm just taking a little tangent for a second, but
sure.
There was another one on an island, or it was called Fort Warren, I think. It was a story that involved a black-clad woman from the Civil War, from the Confederate side, who had come to that fort to free her boyfriend.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that story. That's a great story.
Oh, I know. So one of the things that I did when I was researching all these stories is that I called the ranger's office that supplies rangers to all these islands. And so I said to the man, the officer in charge, I said, I'm trying to find out more about the Black Lady of Fort Warren. And he said, oh, there is no Black Lady. And I just said,
whatever.
I'm really frustrated. What fun are you?
Right? Where's your sense of adventure?
I never did it. I mean, what's the point of saying there is no Black woman? I mean, plenty of people have seen her, but anyway.
Party pooper.
So anyway, so Poe, the young Poe was stationed to this small island in Boston Harbor called Fort Independence, and he when he was walking around one night, he spotted, just by the light of the moon, or just even the half moon, he could barely see it, but there was this obelisk. And it had writing on all 4 sides of it. And on the first side it said, the officers of the U.S. Regiment, Lieutenant Artillery, erected this monument, blah, blah, blah. Then there was a little squib that said, "Here on comes a pilgrim gray to deck the turf that wraps his clay." And then the next one said, "Beneath this stone are deposited the remains of Lieutenant Robert F. Massey of the U.S. Regiment of Light Artillery. Near this spot on the 25th of December, 1817, fell Lieutenant Robert E. Massey, aged 21 years." So it turned out that there was also in his regiment a bully named Lieutenant Green. And he was just he would get very drunk and play at cards and end up challenging someone to a duel. So Massey was the one who fell into his sight, and they went outside into the starlight, and with their seconds and everyone else in the regiment surrounding them, and this Lieutenant Green, who was an expert swordsman, just eviscerated him.
Oh.
And poor Lieutenant Massey just fell dead to the ground. So anyway, they buried him with all possible, honors. And meanwhile, some of Massey's friends went to work and they put out, it probably took much longer than it would today. They could have Googled it. But they sent out letters trying to find out who this Lieutenant Green was. And it turned out that he had a history of duels.
Oh, my.
Of killing men. So in a sense, he was using the army and the whole procedure of swords play as a way to be a serial murderer. So these friends of Massey's took a look through the old dungeons of this fort, and they found a particular isolated down below a dungeon cell that was long disused. And they lured Lieutenant Green down there one night, and they manacled him, threw him in the cell, and began bricking him up, mortar by mortar. They just spent the whole night making this big wall around his cell where no one could hear his cries. And so a number of years later, some men had been called in to do repair work on the below parts of Fort Independence, and they found the skeleton all manacled to the cell, to the interior of the cells, and it was just one of those stories that created a lot of interest when it came to light. But here's the thing. Poe decided to write this as a story of his own, and when he did decide to write it, he talked about it a bunch, and he was called in to his officer, his post commander, and the dialogue went something like this: "Post commander, I understand you've been asking questions about Massey's monument and the duel which he fought." And Poe said, "I have, sir." And the commander said, "And I understand that you've learned all about the subsequent events connected with the duel." And Poe said, "I have, sir." Commander, "Well, you are never to tell that story outside the walls of the fort." But when Poe agreed, he might have been crossing his fingers behind his back. He was thinking, well, tell is different than writing. So he wrote the very scary, creepy, gothic Cask of Amontillado, which takes place in Europe in an old castle. And that was the way he was able to disguise the story. But, he knew it very well. Funnily enough, too, just another interesting footnote to all of this is that Massey, the good guys, his body was disinterred a number of years later and reburied in 3 other different military cemeteries around Boston Harbor. So that was what they meant by the roving skeleton. So it was just a very odd story, and of course leave it to the imagination of an Edgar Allan Poe to really turn it into great fiction.
Oh, yeah, what an irresistible story.
I know. He was good. He was very good, and it all came from first-hand knowledge.
Yeah, that's the best part.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd like to thank Holly for taking the time to talk spooky with me. If you're looking for beautifully written true ghost stories, seek out Holly's work. Her titles are Haunted Island, Ghosts of Boston Town, Vineyard Confidential, and Vineyard Supernatural. Holly also has a Patreon account called The Ghost Lady's Ghosts, the Private Collection. So go give that a look too. In the next episode, we'll return to one of the most haunted places I've ever heard about, a private home in the Quad Cities. I promised I'd tell you about it if I ever got to go back, and, well, I went back. Join me next time as we go lights out.